Hello, everyone. Welcome to State of the Art 2018 in lovely Westminster. Shame you can't see the view, but we're standing across the Abbey and the Houses of Parliament. I've got with me Dr. Peter Brindley. Now, he's a consultant. The ever lovely Peter Brindley. He's a
That's
consultant
more like it.
Of critical care, anesthesiology, and also medical ethics at the University of Alberta in Canada. So, Peter, you're quite the regular feature here. What keeps bringing you back? I mean, you're like a bad penny.
I really am. A bad smell, I think, would be a little more accurate. Why do I keep coming back? It's a bloody marvellous meeting. With the risk of getting banned and no longer invited to all sorts of other meetings, it's one of the preeminent meetings in the world. It's in at least the top one or two. That leaves me enough wiggle room to say to any meeting, yes, you're the other one. England's always wonderful to come back to, but
even on a day like this, I mean, wow.
Well, we've got a view out of the window, which I'm trying to work out whether it's queues trying to get into Westminster Abbey or it's protests outside of Westminster Palace. And I think it's a little bit of both.
Yeah, in case you don't know, tomorrow is a big vote in the UK. Whether we continue to engage with the world or whether we,
Well, I'm truly hoping your currency crashes and this trip gets a little bit cheaper.
Oh, yeah, then I can buy a house as well. But anyway, so you're here to talk about distracted doctoring.
It's true.
Human factors and also decision-making. I mean, if anyone has ever listened to you talk, you've spoken about this at length, amongst other things.
My sympathies to those people.
But why do you think this is so important to junior doctors, particularly doctors and ACCPs and allied health professionals starting to work in intensive care?
Well, am I biased or have I just paid attention? I think human factors are essential. Now, you can define them over gratuitously and sort of say every interaction that anyone has or any time you share an idea you've communicated, but without overstating it, there are the technical skills and there are the non-technical skills, and our curricula still focus on technical skills, fair enough. They still focus on you having a capacious brain and nimble hands. But your actual verbal dexterity, your ability to figure out, work within, and modify the medical culture is every bit as important. Now, you say junior doctors. You know, that I think there's been a lamentable sense of simulation, for example, is for junior doctors, not senior doctors. If we spread it out to human factors, the nice thing is it's for everybody and every part of their career. So the human factors I focused on as a junior were working within a team, giving an instruction, taking an instruction, knowing I was in charge and knowing when I wasn't in charge. Exactly the same is true now. I have somewhat climbed the greasy pole of the medical hierarchy. But in fact, the second half of my career increasingly is working on myself as a person, not being mean, not being impatient, still hopefully bringing something of an A game to the bedside. And that actually, to me, requires constant self-reflection and appreciation of human factors within myself as well as within the team.
I mean, people as well as yourself have been talking about human factors for I mean, at least a decade or more. And yet we're still talking about it. Is that because it's now gaining traction, or is it because no one's listening?
Well, you know what? We're still talking about ARDS management and antibiotics, and we've been doing that for a century. So we'll keep talking about it because we keep wanting to make it better. And in fact, I think there's a real danger that we see it as a tiny little bit of the curriculum. Tick box, yeah, we had a quick talk on human factors. That's human factors done. Now back to the real medicine. And I think it is absolutely central to understanding everything. So, for example, at this magnificent conference, you have the entire Anglosphere represented. But the subtle, but at the same time profound and important differences between Australia, New Zealand, England, Canada, and perhaps there are other nations in the world, they're just slipping my mind right now, will all be a sense of examining the subcultures of those places, the norms of getting things done, the communication styles, our understanding of hierarchy. And so that's perennial. Now, the other thing is, as I say, it's about the individual, it's about the team, it's about the unit, and it is actually about how you engage with the larger hospital. So early on in your career, you might bolster your own sense of importance by slagging off other parts of the hospital. It's a standard sort of human factors way of belonging. trashing other people.
It's tribal culture.
It's tribal, precisely. And as you get further on, you start to say, hang on, just a minute. Hang on, I'm not just a janitor who comes in and does an 8-hour shift and then buggers off. I'm more of a custodian of the values of this hospital. And one of the ways I can get things done in this hospital is by being known, is by putting money in the bank. And what I mean by putting money in the bank is by having spent 20 years turning up on Saturday night saying, what can I do to help, rather than what the bloody hell's going on here. And it's that's that wider understanding of human factors that I would like. If it was a drug, it would be the most powerful drug we have in the hospital.
Most recently, you, I know this is probably a pun, but you prepared a mnemonic for intubation outside, or what you call in the ectopic environment. Firstly, if you could talk to us about that mnemonic, and secondly, do you have your experiences of working late at night, working on your own, being rushed, if perhaps even the word disordered, influenced your wanting to make that mnemonic?
Yes, massively. Now, a mnemonic is only good if you can remember it, pun intended within that. Prepare worked because it also works within French Canada. Prépare, the word works.
Excellent.
It's 7 items long. We know from human factors and cognitive bandwidth, and I realize I'm chucking out buzzwords, but they carry with them their own. They carry. They're up, fair play. That's the other reason I come back to Britain. You insult better than any nation on the planet. It might be your remaining export to the world. 7 items is about one's cognitive bandwidth.
Okay.
You know, the 6 inches between your 2 ears is the most important 6 inches on your body, my friend. So prepare works not because it's sequential, not because it's decerebrate, but because it actually focuses action. So checklists, mnemonics, whatever they might be, seem to only work if they force a question. And so the decerebrate checklist, where you just say, have you got oxygen? Have you done this? Have you done that? Don't seem to work very well. What you need is, what are you going to do when this happens? What are you going to do when this happens? But it's also 7 items long, because 7 items seems to be the max that people can deal with. Now, you say, is it reflective of screw-up submissions, scary experiences? It absolutely is. And so it gives a bit of a cognitive roadmap for everybody. The ectopic environment, I'm trying to promote this idea of airway management outside of the operating room. It fits a motor, is the summary. Now, I know here you call them operating theatres, but with the risk of an awful pun, I'd like to see airway management with a little less drama than there currently is. I think we need to not just look at who the airway expert is. That becomes a massive willy-waving contest of, is it an anatomic issue? Is it a physiologic issue? Is it a situational issue? But if we start looking at, okay, that's the device, okay, that's the knowledge, the subtle bespoke airway management that you and I are going to do is going to depend on the time of night, the people who are available, the past experience of the people who are available. And so for that reason, it wasn't just a decerebrate checklist. It was more a self-reflection, discussion piece, something to use when you practice and something to use when you actually just sit around a boardroom table and say, okay, we've had a couple of oops moments.
That's because, from what I've seen, it's less a set of instructions and more a list of reminders to reflect on.
I think that's beautifully put. Culture is an incredibly important thing. Now, we throw the term out in a lecture. What we need is culture change, and then we're hoisted onto somebody's shoulders and marched out of the room with bunting falling from the ceilings. The problem is people don't define culture. When you look at the unit level, there are ways of looking at your culture, how people manage power differentials, whether people feel it's a me or a we unit, how people feel about face versus saving face versus the patient getting the right outcome, and on and on and on. These are Gert Hofstede's cultural indices, and I was lucky enough to discuss them with Scott Weingart on MCRIT recently. He says, making a shameless plug. But we are culture change agents, but we can only be culture change agents when we start understanding culture. You know, culture is not just people do as I tell them to do because I'm the most senior person. One of the fascinating differences between North American intensive care, flawed as it is, and British intensive care, flawed as it is I think your background from anesthesia and our background as physicians in both cases is our strength and is our weakness. So in North America, the strength is we flatten the hierarchy quickly. The danger is diffusion of responsibility. Who's in charge? Who's going to do it? The flip side for you is I'm in charge, do as I say. No. I'm in charge, do as I say. And given the complexity, it disintegrates. The other fascinating thing, and it makes me come back to conferences like this, is when you're in an operating theater, you don't have to sell people on your idea. It's squirt a drug, oops, gave too much, squirt the antagonist, oops, gave too much, and back and forth it goes. The ICU environment is partly, okay, the instruction I'm going to give is one that I know can get given quickly, the nurse won't question, it'll happen, and then we can move on to even more important things. And that's a subtle difference, but a profound one, especially when you come to airway management. So what you have to do in the heat of battle is say, okay, well, normally I would do this. I'm going to do that. Normally I would do this. However, with this team structure that I have, this time of day, this ectopic location, and these personalities, I'm going to do something different. And that's exasperating for some people because it's so complicated, and for an old geezer like me is eternally fascinating because you can keep getting better and better and better.
So what's next for you?
Oh gosh, more of the same nonsense. I'm always a sort of ready, fire, aim kind of person. So if I can go get a tad philosophical, I guess.
Yeah,
Wendy, you're not. ICU to me is just life writ large. So loss, tragedy, excitement, thrills, feeling important, feeling unimportant and irrelevant. You know, those are all feelings we get during life. So ICU is stuffed full of those. So and the other point to come to a conference is to feel that sense of reinvigoration and energy and to meet colleagues from across the world who feel the same stresses but feel the same delights. And so what do I want to do next? More of the same. I've had the absolute thrill and pleasure of writing opinion pieces for the BMJ for the last year or so.
I saw your blog entry for the conference as well.
And for the conference, the man won't shut up. But so I'm going to keep on doing those, and those are going to be published as a book. Now, God bless the BMJ. It's a huge honor. I'm absolutely thrilled. But they have, possibly appropriately for their readership, edited out a little bit of the bile and a little bit of the borderline House of God sense. And so the book will be the originals with all the oomph.
Excellent.
And so that's going to be in the next year. I wrote a small handbook on crisis management, and I was very happy to publish it, but I felt there was a bit too much psychobabble in there. It was important to have psychologists involved, but for goodness sake, it's for frontline clinicians.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I would like to do a second edition, which is even more to the point.
Oh, wow. So you've got a lot going.
Well, don't we all?
Yeah,
Aren't we all, I don't know, time poor and...
Oh, God, yeah. Speaking of time poor,
indeed,
I think we should probably wrap this up. Before I go, a lot of people might not realize that both Peter and I are hockey fans. So, do you think Canada needs a new expansion team?
Oh my goodness, does it ever? Couldn't we have started with that question? I can do that one. It certainly does. Canadians live, breathe, die, and love hockey.
But they play very badly.
No, they don't. How dare you racist bastard. They actually represent the entire NHL. So if you're supporting an American team, you're actually supporting good Saskatchewan farm boys. But yes, we need expansion teams in Quebec City. We need an expansion team in Saskatoon. It goes on and on and on. God bless the fine denizens of, Las Vegas. But the teams.
I can't believe how they managed, and they did so well in their first season.
Yes, they did. My young son made quite a bit of money by betting on them.
Really?
He really did. Yeah.
I thought they were gonna just do so badly, and they did amazingly.
Have you noticed how easy and free flowing the conversation is now that we're on to hockey? We could do football. We could do. Yeah.
Anyway, thank you for listening, and keep on listening, and we'll have more interviews soon. Bye bye.
Pleasure.